You know, over the past 3 months, we've had a lot of fun. Screw it, let's end this in style. When looking at the Neptunia franchise, there's always something that keeps bringing me back. Whether it be the wacky humor, basic, or game referencey kind, the gameplay, or the characters. So let's talk about them. When it comes to favorites, there can be a variety of reasonings for my choosing. Maybe the gameplay is really good, maybe it's the story of the game, or maybe it's something real small, like, I don't know, being able to interact with my waifu at large. The human brain is an enigma, people. For a game to interest me, there's gotta be characters I like, a decent story, no matter how simple, and at least be a fine game. So, I infer a lot of people, possibly including myself, might be questioning my choice of producing perfection on the list. Nice's last localization of a Neptunia game was definitely one of its most infamous. This spin-off definitely took a wide turn compared to the 3 main games. Though, that's to be expected when a JRPG series has its 4 main characters become idols for an idol group because a different idol group has pretty much taken over. There's no fighting. The closest you get to gameplay aside from events with your chosen CPUs are the idle dancing moments where you have to set different stage effects at the right time while they dance. This can be a double-edged sword, as for one, this kinda bored me at times since there wasn't much gameplay for the most part aside from pressing the X button. And when you leave the audience bored, they won't want to pick the game back up. Makes sense considering it took me almost a year to finish it. However, the interactions between the CPUs and the player character are actually pretty interesting. If you chose Noir, you'd technically be competing with Uni for Noir's attention. If you chose Blonde, you'd play babysitter to Ram and Ram, as well as be the median in skills between them and Blonde. You can get a personal relationship with Vert, as she eventually recruits a heel doggo, as well as the player as younger siblings. This game is weird, yet entertaining in its events. So definitely not the best, but not complete crap either. Time for something a bit more familiar with what the Neptunia series is known for. However, instead of idols, we're going Senran Kagura! Neptunia U Action Unleashed is a game I originally believed to be like Dynasty Warriors. Because, I don't know, imagining bright-colored anime girls as samurai warlords makes complete sense. Yes, someone call a doctor. This is another case of a very simple story, though I can work with it better because U Action Unleashed is a beat-em-up game. Considering the original reference to Dynasty Warriors I made, no matter how nonsensical it was, this is a nice segue into the gameplay. This may be what little testosterone is left in me, but I love the feeling of annihilating everything in my way. Though, because of my recklessness, I get a costume break. Yeah, I'm not exactly a fan of this. I can appreciate the added attack, however the defenses are pretty nep and weak. Like, I know I can turn it off, but it keeps watching me. Like if fan service could look through the 4th wall and see all our insecurities for playing with these characters, silently judging us, while still allowing us control. We were talking about Dynasty Warriors, right? Considering that Neptunia U is a beat-em-up game, as well as the U at the end, I was always confused as why it didn't star Blonde before playing the game. And then mid-2016 rolled around. Take Neptunia U's basic gameplay, add in a high school theme, make it zombieception, with them making a zombie movie to save the school from closing, as well as a live zombie outbreak occurring due to the Zombie King coming back, add in Blonde as a head writer, with all of the stereotypical fanfiction type writing that comes with Blonde's character, make it harder, add mustaches as an accessory to put on your fighters, and you've got Blonde plus Neptune vs. Zombies. Even though the gameplay is the same as Neptunia U for the most part, Blonde plus Neptune adds a bit of difficulty to that. Not only that, but I enjoy how the story is told. It's very much like a Neptunia game to go from a serious discussion between Blonde and Uzume about the villain, to then hear the hilariously poor acting of Iris Heart. I say poor in quotes because it's done on purpose. They're in high school, showing that even though they're goddesses, they are not all-knowing. This game's just really entertaining, although at times its difficulty can be a bit jarring at points, which requires grinding.
I believe I can grind! I believe I can reach the heights! I hear it every night and day when my level goes up a rank!
Ugh. We're finally getting into some of the main games. Rebirth 2 Sisters Generation is a remake of the original Mach 2. One of the most interesting things about this game is its protagonist. Nepgear being a lead is a nice change of pace from having Neptune as a lead. This gives the game quite a different tone, as Nepgear is a much more serious protagonist compared to the zaniness that is Neptune's character. The game feels like it has higher stakes due to how the different protagonists handle the situations, as well as how different these situations are compared to each other. One thing that makes the game stand out are the different makers that get focus. And while I'm not a fan of all of these makers, namely Red and her wifey hunting, however, other makers like the shy yet soulful singer 5PB are actually really interesting if they're given time in the plot. However, that's a big if. Namely, since Falcom gets little time in the spotlight, and the only reason you get CyberConnect 2, Marvelous AQL, and Tekken in the path to get to the true ending are for them to have one line each in the ending. Aside from this, Sisters Generation has the problem of not standing out. The game doesn't exactly set itself apart from Rebirth 1 or 3. Another reason why Rebirth 2 won't get higher on the list are its endings. Yeah, there are several endings to this game, so much that it can overwhelm a player on their first try. However, these issues don't separate Sisters Generation from being a really good game. Crossovers are definitely an interesting experiment. It can give fans of a certain side an interest in the other. And this is what Super Dimension vs. Sega Hard Girls did for me. This crossover game of time travel was able to give some insight into the Sega Hard Girls as characters, though this is done through having the Sega reps of Neptunia go against them in a battle across time, and it's up to World Traveler IF and Segami to stop it. What puts Super Dimension vs. Sega Hard Girls so high on this list is its gameplay, as the additions to the game such as the Fever Gauge, the ability to jump in battle, as well as the new class change, and a layer of strategy to the very simple JRPG. Plus, having IF star in her own game was really cool, especially with her comedic role of Straight Man, which hasn't really been done much in a protagonist. However, one of my main issues with this game is Segami. I just cannot stand her personality or how brutally honest she is. And I mean brutally honest, especially in how she was willing to stop Uzume from recovering so she wouldn't fight with Dreamcast. I mean, it makes sense, but it's a bit much. Iris Heart. Introduction complete. Being a sequel to Rebirth 2, it's quite a surprise to have our protagonist Neptune be set in the alternate dimension of the Ultra Dimension, and is stuck partnering with that world's CPUs, as their first partner starts out as quite the lazy napper with the short, tempting temper. One place where Rebirth 3 shines are in its characters. Due to how these characters are just beginning to interact with each other, they aren't exactly as mature in their handlings with each other. Noord has too much pride in how her new last station is doing well, Blonde hating the competition largely due to her being the only CPU for such a long time, Vert being an invader to that game industry's mainland while whining and crying at the sight of something unsightly or against her, and the previously mentioned Iris Heart. One word: run! 2 more words: no escape. As for the gameplay, compared to the previously mentioned Rebirth 2, the gameplay is slightly modified, namely in the ways your SP attacks and EXE drives work. Instead of getting its own gauge, EXE drives can be used through segments of SP, as they are separated into 4 segments with the max amount being 1,000 points. That, and you also don't get EXE drives at level 25 anymore. You get them for utilizing SP attacks a heckload, for each character by the way, getting a plan, and then fighting a mini-boss monster in the dungeon before gaining access to Lean Box, aka Late Chapter 4. Yeah, this is a bit of a problem for me. The gameplay itself is fine, and even though I'm not completely on board with it, not having access to EXE drives makes the game a bit more challenging. However, my problems come in with the over-reliance of the plans, as the EXE drives are just one part of how obtuse these plans can be, as you need to find plans for 6 dungeons to view cutscenes detailing backstory and key events for this game's final boss. In other games, especially Rebirth 2, there were an obtuse means of getting the true ending, such as getting shares for all nations to get the CPUs to join you, and Lily rankings, and the obtuse means of plans were for getting the oracles to fight. I was fine with it there because the oracles are not necessary to get Rebirth 2's true ending. Rebirth 3 is a whole other story. I see this as artificial means of extending game time. And while the extensive means of getting the true ending is indeed a problem, the game more than makes up for it. The characters are nice and fun, the gameplay is a nice challenge, and the much more lightheartedness of the game was a breath of fresh air after the much more serious plot of Rebirth 2. Iris Heart will step on you and you must accept it! This game has really been a gem for me. The idea of gameception is an interesting idea. Add it to a series that is the walking definition of gameception, and you get game characters enjoying the game while you play the game. That makes sense, right? Either way, Cyber Dimension's raid-like action-adventure RPG is quite fun. I enjoy the little aesthetics that make it look like the MMO the game is satirizing. This type of game is really fun, and with it being Neptunia's first time in the Unreal Engine, I'd consider this the step in the right direction. I enjoy seeing Vert in her element as we learn about this game world with her in complete enthusiasm, to the point where so much focus gets placed on Vert that you'd wonder why the game isn't titled after her. I can enjoy how the game focuses away from her loneliness of not having a younger sister, although it's still there, and more so of what made Vert a really enjoyable character in my eyes, the relatability to the player. There isn't exactly many issues I have with the game, as the most I could point out are how the combos are a bit clunky at points, and that, 2-minute load screen for the game. Though because of that, the game is crisp and clean, the environments are diverse, and the game runs fluidly. Ultimately a great experience. There are other things about Cyber Dimension that I enjoy, namely the side antagonists Kyria and Black Cat Princess, due to how well they are able to reference and parody aspects of Sword Art Online and Axel World respectively, while also making the two characters completely different in personality, but that would just leap into spoiler territory, and I'd rather not hide in those trenches. Danganronpa still got those pull from V3. Ah, the one that started it all. Oh, Josh Scorcher!
Cut!
There we go. Neptunia Rebirth 1 is my first Neptunia game, and I gotta say, what a great first impression! This game was my first exposure to the main kind of gameplay within the franchise, and I really like how the gameplay from Victory translated to this game. This also allows the game to have a good amount of difficulty, simple to pick up and hard to master. That's the way I like it. I'm gonna compare it to the dumpster fire that is the original version to add to my point. I like how they made Noir and Blonde a bit more likable in Rebirth 1. While yes, the reason why Noir and Blonde were antagonistic to Neptune is justified, the way Rebirth 1 has us spend more time with these characters in our party instead of at the fucking end of the game, it allows me to get more of a chance to like these characters. This allows all 4 of them to have interactions they wouldn't normally have in the game, since the game takes place in the process of ending the console war. Instead of seeing these characters bigger at the end and nothing else, we get to see variations of the goddesses working together, such as Vert and Blonde's seduction methods for gaining access to the Basilicom, or seeing Neptune and Noir as friendly rivals while testing out a weapon. And that's the part I really enjoy about this game. The characters interacting with each other gives the game much more room for comedy and personality. And what's Neptunia without both? Was there ever any doubt? Toaded is the game that added the beautiful feature of budget after 3 games of using the same assets. This game was largely a step up compared to all Neptunia games before it, largely within its storytelling. every single main character, including the main 4 CPUs, the 4 CPU candidates, the 4 gold third, don't bother, Noah already made the jab, and newcomers Uzume Tenobushi and Ultra Dimension Neptune are given quite a sizable role within the story. And considering that Mega Dimension has 14 main characters, that goes to show how well its storytelling is, so that no character gets forgotten at one point or another. It makes the units mean something, not just another number. This game is also a step up through its gameplay. Before you make an action, you can only move so far in battle. This makes the gameplay more strategic, as every move you make counts. This is also shown in how, in battle, you can actually do more damage to enemies by attacking from their behind. Dirty fighters always win, and in some cases, literally. Another big spectacle of Mega Dimension are the giant battles against the Dark CPUs. They have a much larger scale than other boss encounters, and most of the strategy for these fights come from placing each member of the team in strategic spots to deal the highest amount of damage. Mega Dimension is a great game. It enhances on old gameplay ground, has an excellent story, and doesn't leave any of its characters out of the story for very long. I'm Pcuspard, and Mega Dimension Neptunia V2 is my favorite Hyperdimension Neptunia game.